Okay. Yeah, so photonic computing is computing with photons instead of computing with, yeah, exactly, quantum particles. So you take a photon instead of electron. Well, you know, quantum particles is a new idea. That's quantum. So I'll show you the kind of like landscape there. You know, photon, nobody's computing with photons right now, but we do transmit data with photons. Quantum, again, nobody's computing with quantum. The hope is that you can. Well, I'm going to work there, CMARS, so I don't know about penny stock pumping because I actually am planning on taking a job at the company. So do you work at the stocks in your portfolio? Do you, when you buy Apple shares, do you get a job offer at Apple? So anyway, there's finally what we're really used to here is using electrons and transistors is the classic, you know, classical computing that has worked really well. You know, the clock speeds here are, no, I'm still going to work on Godel. I'm still going to, I'm just going to be a consultant and help out. I'm not going to stop looking at stocks for you guys and working on Godel. In fact, I'm kind of happy in some ways the challenge account is dead because now I can focus on you guys, my community and my users instead of focusing on whatever stock pick and getting anxious about my stock trading and, you know, just like it's very distracting. And you notice that over the last, what is it, 5-6 months, most of my content is just me nervously staring at a screen. And that's not really that engaging. I know some of you like it because at least I'm trading real money, whereas all the other furus, fake gurus out there aren't even trading, or they're not showing you what they're trading, and they're not showing you their account value. You know, at least I was doing that. So, you know, but I think, you know, just looking at stocks for people is kind of a, you know, a good idea. Capper killed the challenge account. Yeah, but if I sit and stare at challenge account all day, yeah, I'm not sure that's true here, but whatever you want to believe is great. But yeah, this $30,000 account went to 260 and then went to 0. I'm not sweating it that hard. Maybe you care about it more than I do. Do you want me to send you the 30,000? But in any event, you know, the trading the challenge account is a fun idea, but I think it's just kind of like ultimately like everyone wants to see it go up big, and that encourages a lot of risk taking. And, you know, it's sort of, well, I mean, J-Dude, that's how I went from 30K to 260K. Massive risk, massive reward. You can't go up, you know, 10x without taking some pretty serious account ending risks, and it finally kind of caught up. Yeah. Yeah, of course, I'm still doing stock analysis and stuff like that. Soon, Divine, soon. It's all your fault. So in any event, you know, most compute has been working through electrons, and exactly, Monty. Joey, you know, when news is announced, news is announced. You can't get news from me. Yeah, so photonic computing is on its way. I mean, I think that the photonic interconnect is already being done at scale, but the idea of computing with photons is not a new idea. Photons obviously have no real speed limitation, you know, speed of light. Electrons travel at the speed of light, but only under certain conditions. In a copper wire, they travel at, you know, 5 orders of magnitude less speed than a photon does. But, you know, some of this has an asterisk. One of the nice things about matmoles on photons is that their complexity is O of 1. Thanks, man. Which is a pretty amazing thing. Whereas obviously on a transistor-based computer, complexity is like somewhere like N 2.3 or 2.4 is, I think, the fastest algorithm known for matmoles. So it's a pretty exciting possibility there, and that's why Microsoft is working on it. Nice, Humphrey. Yeah, thank you. So Microsoft's AOC chip, you know, they're calling it the AOC, the all optical computer, and it's you know, pretty big effort at Microsoft. They're spending a lot of money. There's a lot of people there working on this, and they're talking about how it could help with AI. Whereas obviously, you know, nobody believes, at least seriously, that quantum can help with AI. So analog optical computer for AI inference. So part of the thesis is, look, if D-Wave is at, you know, what's D-Wave's market cap? D-Wave is just like basically a fake company, is a 9 billion market cap. You know, I don't see why we can't get this company to a, you know, even half the market cap or a tenth of the market cap. And, you know, QUBT is almost a 3 billion market cap. So same story there. And that's after a lot of these stocks have dropped a lot. So at one point they were even bigger. So that's kind of what the theory is on this thing. You know, we have to build a team. We have to build a lab. You know, it's not going to be overnight, but I think, you know, read the Microsoft paper. It's pretty exciting. Yes, individual photons, you know, the signal loss in photons is terrible. There's so many technical hurdles to get through, which is why we don't have a photonic computer yet, right? So it'll probably be 10 years before anybody could make it work. That's a brand new company, J-Dude. The company barely has any assets. The asset is going to be me. What's the worst quantum to short? Oh, I see. All right, J-Dude, don't buy it, short it. I mean, I don't care. I'm not asking you to buy it. There's a lot of stocks on the stock market. I just showed you Microsoft's paper, right? So Microsoft got it to go at 50 megahertz, which is, I think, a great start. So we're going to try to replicate this work and maybe reach out to some of these people and see if they want to join this company. And I'll send you guys the paper. And there's another paper from a Chinese, why 10 years? I mean, huge breakthroughs take 10 years would be optimistic. You know, I think it might take longer than that. I mean, quantum has taken 40, 50 years and we basically don't have anything to show for it. I've been planning on this for months, actually. And I have other things I'm planning now too, so I'm always doing stuff. You know, like I said, whatever, you know, don't watch the stream. Block my Twitter. You don't have to listen. It's not my company per se, but, you know, we'll see. Divine, I don't know. Like, you know, roll up isn't a terrible strategy for buying good stuff. I don't know. Like I said, you know, I don't really care what you think. I think I'm going to be a consultant. London has good hedge funds. I mean, I have a history of publicly traded companies going in and starting from scratch. I don't know if you guys remember KBio, but I did something like that with KBio. Yeah. Speedcuber, I would say a few months. That is, I'm the CEO of Godel. I'm still the CEO of Godel. I'm never going to stop being, well, never say never, but I like being the CEO of Godel. I think we'll find a CEO for QCLS that's, you know, a physicist and understands this stuff better than me. But getting back to the point here, I actually have a neat thing. If you wanted to do a 10 by 10 map mole, what would the amount of operations be? Okay, 10 by 10 map mole is just multiplying two 10 entry matrices, 10 by 10, you know, 1, 2, 10 this way, 1, 2, 10 that way, by another one of these. Same thing. How many ops is that? And it's really interesting that for photonic computing, theoretically at least, nobody can do this now, of course, but theoretically, you could do this very, very quickly. Setting up the matrix entries are probably the hardest part. So the amount of steps versus a GPU is actually pretty remarkably smaller. In fact, it can get up to, I mean, again, GPUs will scale exponentially, whereas O of 1 is a little bit contrived. So like maybe more realistic thing here is, let's say maybe like 2n, I want to say, yeah, I have a formula actually. Let me see if I can look it up. Yeah, so it's 2n plus 1 for the mathematical part versus, you know, it's actually 2n squared plus n for GPU, and that's in ideal conditions. We have not been able to get to ideal conditions, so it's like 2.4x, n to the 2.4th for GPUs. So getting optical working could be a really big thing, and that's why Microsoft's on it. And again, their paper specifically says that they would like to do this for matrix multiplication, which is the working horse of AI. You can call it photonic computing or optical computing. You know, it doesn't matter what you call it. Photonics is optics. But you know, what do I know? Some people call it light. Well, you know, now that I'm getting involved in the company more formally, you know, there may be filings and things like that. So I have to respect the legal process there. Yeah, QCI is it's not clear what QCI is doing. They seem to have jumped around on a couple of things. No, I don't think the issue with optical... Look, there's like 10 issues you all have to solve. The engineering is like, you know, very, very, very... Yeah, exactly. JJ knows. Very, very, very challenging work. I don't think the company is going to do anything with blockchain, no. Yes, Cody. So anyway, well, I mean, why do anything? Hello there. Why does anybody start a company? Why does anybody do anything? Yeah, it's a challenge. You know, the nobody's actually tried to make a full-scale photonic computer. Of course, I'm going to be analyzing stocks on this channel. I don't know, Leonard, why you are spamming me too. Yeah, my challenge account is dead, Jeff. It blew up. Shorting Capper. Thank you. Rest in peace. Yeah, so, you know, first, I'm not sure that, that's true. Why, hello there. Do you remember KBio? This is exactly what I did with KBio. I joined KBio at $1 a share, went to $40. I also built a company called Vertrophin, which was a OTC microcap, and I built that. It's now 3.5 billion. So if you have been following me, this is exactly how I make my money. Trading is, you know, trading is tricky. Yeah, well, you know, once upon a time I knew nothing about pharma, and hopefully I'll have some help. My main thing is a company called Godel, which is software you see in front of your eyes here. Yeah, basically QCLS is a complete restart from scratch. The company had a past where it, I think, did biopharma and other things, and it failed. And they're going to bring in new people to do photonics. They have a license with an Israeli company called Light Solver. I'm not banned from direct investments. But thank you for the rumor. Yeah, calling Adam, I think, you know, the point of the challenge account was to entertain you guys. Are you not entertained? 30,000 to 260 to 0. No, look, I thought Capra was going to fail, obviously. But, you know, this isn't running a hedge fund. This is a... The thing about, even if you're up 1,000,000%, if a short goes against you 10x and it's a 10% position, your money's gone. That's it. I still think that QC is a short, but the reason the QC short hasn't worked is what led me to QCLS, and maybe even a second stock, but I'll talk about that some other time. So yeah, it's pretty similar user. I would say that's correct. That's a pretty good way to look at it, actually. So basically the reason quantum shorts haven't worked is people look at NVIDIA, it's the largest company in the world, 5 trillion market cap, or what have you. And people want to know, the market wants to know what could look like that. What's the future? And they're erroneously betting on quantum when quantum obviously can't scale or do anything useful. You know, the quantum map moles, for example, in this example, the quantum matmuls are the same. They can't do matmuls faster than a GPU. And I'm talking about algorithmic speed. So quantum and GPU have this algorithmic speed, 2n to the 2.4 plus n, whereas optical, again, not doesn't exist, neither does quantum, but at least in theory could go a lot faster. Now, what about clock speed? Well, we know GPUs go 2 gigahertz, CPUs, this is CPUs as well, by the way, CPUs, can get to even 5 gigahertz, and then you have multiple cores, so you can multiply this by, say, I don't know what the desktops have nowadays, 24 cores, and then GPUs can have as much as 16,000 cores, which is what makes them so special and why NVIDIA is the most valuable company in the world. So the question is, quantum is at, instead of 2 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz, quantum is at, I believe, 10 kilohertz for IonQ, which is, I got these backwards, 10 kilohertz for IonQ, capital H, lowercase z. And I think the superconducting companies are like maybe 1 megahertz. So really, really slow, and the same algorithmic speed. So you cannot win using a quantum computer for matmuls. And so far, I think AI is, it's never going to not be matmuls as far as we can tell. Maybe it'll change someday, but it's not going to change the Shor's algorithm, that's for sure. So here in optical computing, and TPUs are basically the same concept here with I would say they don't have an algorithmic efficiency, but they have certainly an operations efficiency. So I guess you could say they sort of have an instruction, the amount of instructions that you need as an ASIC, is less. The clock speed's no faster, but it is less work. And that's sort of the implementation part of this in terms of this exponent being 2.4 versus closer to 2. Anyway, on optical computing or photonic computing, there's 2 ways to say it. There's no, at least theoretical barrier to a terahertz, which no computer has ever achieved. And then you have the algorithmic efficiency at 2n plus 1. You wouldn't need a terahertz if you can achieve 2n plus 1. You could actually, for photonic computing, you could do the same clock speed or less clock speed. Look at GPUs run at a slower clock than CPUs, and they're much better. So with this, really 100 megahertz or 1 gigahertz would be more than enough. And Microsoft already hit 50 megahertz with their AOC chip. This is the AOC from Microsoft, and AOC 2, who knows what AOC 2 will do? Maybe AOC 2 will be, 200 or 300 megahertz. And again, with the lack of an exponential in your matmul, could you get to a point where you really, don't need massive data centers anymore, football field size data centers? And that's the reason these stocks are going to stay relevant for however long NVIDIA stays relevant, because, covering the earth and data centers is probably not the way to go. Now, again, I'm not saying any one company is going to win and become the next NVIDIA. That would be irresponsible, but it's worth working on. It's worth kind of like, for me, obviously this field of quantum has excited me. I've been working on it for the last year, and that's caused me to learn a lot about computing and a lot about hardware. And I've been working on GPUs for many years, and been an NVIDIA fanboy for a while. So it's fun to think about like what could be next. And in my research in quantum, I've sort of well, Ballin asks us a good question. Why buy QCLS if you're starting from scratch? Honestly, I think it's for the public listing, right? Look at QUBT. QUBT raised $1 billion. IonQ raised $3 billion, all from public markets. Public market excitement about what the next NVIDIA is doesn't translate to private market excitement. If I started a computing startup today, maybe I could raise a few million, but it would be very difficult. I think there's a new 10Q out, 5150. Yeah, I can't be officer or director, correct. But again, maybe that'll change soon. We'll see. I like that idea, Philip. I certainly could do, I have more accounts. I could definitely do challenge accounts. That's a good idea, or a good question, Moon. That could kind of be cool. I mean, if you look at the valuation of any of those companies and the valuation of QCLS, there are 4 million shares outstanding, but there's also preferred stock, so you have to count that as well. But with 4 million shares outstanding and a $7 stock, I mean, you do the math of, you know, if you got to QUBT's valuation, you know, that would be a really big price. If you got to QBTS valuation, that would be even bigger. So I think, you know, exactly, Nix, that's what I'm working on. You want Fat Cat's challenge account? I have a very busy day ahead of me, as you can imagine. So I'm going to be all over the place. See, I'm not a long only guy. I'm not a long only guy. And of course, Capper was like squeezed to get liquidated at the top. Yeah, Leonard, they don't have anything. I've been clear about that. It's a brand new restart. Just like if you and I started a startup tomorrow, we don't have anything. We have to get an office. We have to get employees. We have to start from scratch. That's, you got to trust management. That's what a startup is. No, it's not bad to be long only. What's up, Koreans? Oh, you want a new challenge account? Oh God. See, I'm telling you that I don't want to do this. You know, it takes away from my day to day. I'm here to build software, which is called Godel. I want to analyze stocks using Godel so you guys get some interesting picks, but also see how to use the software. But I don't want to run a hedge fund. If I wanted to run a hedge fund, I'd call my rich friends and set up shop in Switzerland and trade for a living. It's not what I'm good at either, right? I'm much better at building companies like Retrophin, like Godel. I don't think we can. I'm with you, Janice or Jenny. The problem is that I can't end quantum because ending quantum means ending NVIDIA, right? The market cares about what comes next after NVIDIA. Not, you know, next year or in 2 years or 3 years, but like literally over the course of decades, what will replace NVIDIA the way NVIDIA replaced Intel. And the market will never stop being curious about that. So quantum can't die until NVIDIA dies in some ways. I've tried to break quantum. I told everybody about breaking it and nobody, you know, the market still did what it did. So, and it caused me to start thinking, well, why? Why is that the case? Why are people so excited about computing in general? And duh, I mean, NVIDIA is the biggest company in the world. So they look at quantum and say, well, it sounds like next generation computing. And if you try to tell them the facts, they say, well, you don't know what's going to happen in 10 years. And the answer is no, of course I don't. But of course, I think one technology is more promising than the other. So if you want to get in computing and go where the money is, following all of the, you know, computing fervor and on frontier computing and next generation computing, then, you know, it's a good time to invest in that space. And, you know, I did this in biotech 20 years ago and I became a biotech expert. You know, I spent a few years in computing and, you know, I'm certainly a corporate expert now. So I think I can help hire some people and get the company going. I still think quantum is zero. I just can't deny that the marketplace wants to see next generation computing. IonQ is ludicrously overvalued. So are all the other ones. The problem is, what's going to break the spirit of the shareholders at 10, 20 billion market caps? You know, there's no way these companies could be, you know, valuable, but I can understand why people want to buy it. Cerebras is an interesting company, you know, wafer scale, you know, but it's still sort of a GPU at the end of the day. Yeah, quantum has been frustrating. I've lost millions in quantum, also in Capper. But, you know, I made millions in some other things like ATYR, Sava, you know, etc.